those that are Vietnam veterans specifically, just raise your hand. Okay. And if those that are veterans, just look around and make sure you touch bases with those that raise their hand. There are other veterans in the room, but anyhow, just it's a way to kind of network. So I appreciate you all knowing who's who. Mark Newman is supposed to be our guest speaker tonight, and if he comes in, then he's going to go right to the podium. So we're going to put him to work. He served in the 151st, I think it's an infantry group, I believe, and he was a mechanic, a field mechanic on vehicles. And he started in 1968 and went through 1968. So it's during that era, the Tet Offensive, and I said it doesn't matter where you were. I want to tell a little story about this, and I don't have the precise date when this occurred, but I do have a Time magazine with a picture of General Westmoreland on the front. And he's addressing Congress. He is the only active general that ever addressed Congress, period. And he told the American public and Congress that, hey, the war is just about wrapped up. We're turning it over to the Vietnamese. Everything's going hunky-dory. And a month or two later, the Tet Offensive occurred. And everywhere in Vietnam was affected. And there was a lot of uploading of supplies to the south to the point where they didn't have to bring stuff down. It was already there. So when that tinderbox lit, we had all kinds of media over there at the time. And they're filming this. Well, the American public sitting back watching the TV saying, in Hanoi, or in Saigon, our embassy crawling with NVA troops, and all this fighting going on, and machine gun fire, and you're thinking, gee, didn't I just hear this is on the downside of this war? And so anyhow, that was probably a big, major turning point in Vietnam. And of course, you poor guys that were in the field going through all of this stuff, you had no idea that, hey, the whole country is a sham. Because you guys were kept in the dark, probably like anyone else. Maybe Doc might have had a clue. So, okay, with that, what I'm going to do, I do have a backup program. And I've asked Miss Wanda Sartain to bring her program on Don Stratton. And I've told a few people about Don Stratton. He was on the USS Arizona. One of, is it 4 remaining or 5? 5 remaining veterans that were assigned to the USS Arizona. His story is extremely riveting. He's almost 96?
He is 96.
96 now?
He was this month, the 14th, I believe.
And so with all he went through, which you're going to hear from her, is just flat amazing. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn that over. Oh, a couple quick introductions. I think everybody knows everybody. This gentleman in the back, have we met?
Yeah.
And Sue and Jerry.
Oh, okay, yeah, you've come before. Okay.
Yeah.
Coast Guard.
And everybody knows Ray. And then I know we've got 2 gentlemen. Calvin,
Yeah,
if you want to introduce yourself.
I'm Calvin Miller. I live next to Charlie. I get to hang out with him all the time.
Okay.
You're from Vietnam.
Are you bragging or complaining?
I'm bragging.
And Ray Straw, you're in time.
You made it.
I'm running a little late.
That's all right. Just come on in. Ray, you want to introduce yourself, what you're running for office for?
Okay.
This is Ray Straw.
Well, my name is Ray Straw, and I am running for city councilman in Glendale, in the Merrill District. And I've known Bill for a few years because we've done a number of car shows and raised a lot of money for veterans. So, yes, I was in Vietnam 23 months and 17 days. So we flew medevac for the first CAV, and then later for the 1st Aviation Brigade down in the Mekong Delta. So that's my story. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're still sticking to it. Okay, And no, don't get too comfortable. Come on up here. This is where
Did you hear that?
You're on.
One way to do it, I
He
guess.
was just vamping until you showed up.
It's kind of doing the shuffle here. But come on up here. I do need you to use the microphone.
Okay.
Is it on? Is it on? Yep, it's on.
It's on. Did it work?
Yep, yep.
Good. All right, when do you want me to start?
I think I told them that you were part of the, I'm gonna get my cheat notes here. 151st Transportation
Long bed.
in Long Bend. But was it a brigade, was it a battalion?
Oh, it's a transportation unit. And we hauled equipment all around, within a 100-mile radius, all the way around the base, is what we did. It was, driving a truck does not seem like it's a very exciting thing to do.
That was a tough job.
Mike,
They can't hear.
Wow. Is that better?
That's
Yeah.
better.
I'm sorry. I'm still asleep. I just got back from Kansas City not too long ago. I want to show you something real fast. This is what people think about. How many of you ever heard of the Medal of Honor? Everybody in the room, right? And what does it take to earn a Medal of Honor?
A lot.
A lot?
A lot.
Basically, it's circumstance.
Yeah.
Does everybody understand that? All right, somebody does it, takes what needs to be done and does it. And he doesn't think about what kind of award he's going to win or what's going to happen. That's what it takes to become a Medal of Honor. And I am not a Medal of Honor, I'll tell you that right
Same
now.
thing everybody should do every day this day, but they don't think about it.
Right. Yeah. This gentleman right here, his name is Nick Bacon. You know, you've heard of this?
He's from my hometown.
He's from your hometown, which is
Surprise.
surprise, right?
Are you surprised?
And surprisingly, it's surprise. And I served at the same time that he did in Vietnam. He got what he didn't even ask for. What he did is he just went out and did the job. All the officers were killed or wounded way up north and to the east side of Vietnam. They were way over what would you call it? They had more people than the enemy had a huge 300 people. They had like 30 or 40 people total for that. And he took up and did everything. How many of you ever read the story about Audie Murphy? I dropped it.
Sorry, Nick.
How many of you ever read the bio on Audie Murphy? Okay, just two?
I know something about it, but not.
Okay. Or watch the movie. They made a movie of it, of the whole thing. Don't worry about it. I'll take care of it later.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you compare what Audie Murphy did during World War II and what he did in Vietnam, they're almost identical.
Really?
Yeah. You look at what they did on that day in northern Vietnam on the east side. It's almost word for word when you sit down and read both of them side by side or watch a movie about it. It's an amazing thing. And when I did that, I said, wow, this is what it takes. Now, let's talk about what I did in Vietnam. I joined the Army in August of 1980, what year, dear?
67, dear.
1980, what was it?
1967.
1967.
Yes.
And I went to Vietnam in 1968. I married my wife just before I left, literally. We got married on the... When?
December 22nd.
December 22nd. I gotta include her. I
If I
gotta
ask
include
my
her.
wife that, she's from Thunder.
And I went to Vietnam. That was an exciting, terrible thing when I got there. They flew us out of Travis Air Force Base. We stopped in Hawaii, which none of us had ever done. We stopped in the Philippines, which none of us had ever done. We stopped in Guam and a couple other places. And then we got off the boat, basically, in Vietnam. Now, what do you think was the worst thing that we thought of when we got off of the airplane? How many Vietnam vets have we got here? A whole bunch of you, right? When you got off that airplane just outside of Long Binh, what's the first thing that hits you in the face? Anybody know?
The heat.
The heat, and what else?
Smell or rain,
The smell.
Yeah.
Knock you down.
that's true.
Yeah.
Knock you down. I mean, just knock you down. Holy mackerel. Am I going to be able to sustain this? There were 240 people on that aircraft when we landed. And the airport seemed like it was about as long as this room. You can imagine that. When we landed, this is really, really, really exciting. Because when they landed, they put on all 4 brakes. All the brakes were on when they hit the ground. And just, and we got off the airplane. It was horrible. It was horrible. But you know what? In a few weeks, couldn't smell it anymore.
Yeah.
So we still remember it, don't we? That's how hard it was. And they shipped us off to Tan Son Nhut. Not Tan Son Nhut, but Long Binh is where we went. And in trucks, in the back seat, and in the dump part, and everything else. And everything was black. Everything was black. All types of grass and weeds and stuff like that was black. As black as that ring back there on that mirror. Everything was dead. Who remembers what it was? Raise your hand. Only one? What was it?
I was in the Navy, but
Okay.
I was at the end
Mm-hmm.
in 73.
73? Yeah.
I was on riverboats and landing craft.
Ooh, that was
being there rescued.
Crazy stuff. It was called Agent Orange. Agent Orange. Did we know what it was? No, we just knew that they'd put something out there so that killed everything, including us. Including us.
Yeah.
Killed a lot of people. And I sat down and just I wrote some stuff. Okay. When I enlisted in the Army, I weighed 121 pounds. 121 pounds. I had 4 years of college under my belt. No degree. They threw me out. How many of you ever heard of Fort Lost in the Woods?
Leonard Wood,
Leonard Wood. That's right. We call it.
armpit of the world.
Yeah, you name it. We
Yeah.
had it, right? That's where I did all of my training. We had some funny things going on there. I got tripped in the first week and I banged up my knee and I could hardly walk. And as a result, I failed the PT test. I know that all of you know what the PT test is, right? Okay. That meant that I could hobble like this. They kept me. They didn't send me home.
On a profile.
Yeah. So I stayed. I failed the test. I didn't get promoted. I left as an E2, and I left my AIT without a change too. I came out as an E2, and I was a truck driver. They taught me how to drive a truck that I already knew how to drive. They taught me how to drive a 5-ton truck that I knew how to drive already. They taught me how to drive a Jeep that I already knew how to drive. And I had a good grade on that. And that was my beginning. And I went to Vietnam as an E2 truck driver. Period. What do we haul? Everything. Everything. That was the bad thing. All right. Long Bend was not a pretty place, but it was the largest. I'll say it was the largest base in Vietnam. Everything started there. Everything ended there. Usually was just up on the hill from where we were. And we hauled anything and everything. The first, 15, 20 days, it was just absolutely, every day we went out and drove 100 miles or better. Sometimes on pavement, sometimes not on pavement, sometimes with our heart in our mouth. It's scary. And at the same time, we just got in the car, got in our trucks, and drove and drove and drove. And he would love my trucks. You got up in the morning, you went to the trucks, you fired it up, they were already loaded, and away we went in convoy. Convoy was 35 miles an hour. We had Jeeps in front and Jeeps in back, and Jeeps that went both back and forth all the time. It was just a job to do. Once you got used to it, it was a job to do. So we did a job. And then, on the 30th of January, 1968, 6 o'clock in the morning. And you noticed I pulled that right out of my brain, didn't I? Must be a special day, right? All right. We were hauled over to the ammo dump in Long Bend, and then we moved out and we were sitting all spread out, one right after another, ready to get going and go to a place called Cu Chi, which was about 30 miles away. And everybody was getting kind of antsy because we wanted to get done. We wanted to get done. Because that was the whole goal, was to come back in one piece. So I got up on the back of my truck, and I don't know why, I was the only idiot that did that. My truck was loaded with about 5,000 pounds of ammunition. Everything from little bitty things to great big things. So I was a traveling target for all practical means, and some were bigger than we were, and some were smaller. And I'm standing up there, and I'm just looking around. I'm the only one up on top. I'm looking around, and all of a sudden, I see this big boom. I know it's hard for me to say this. What do you call it when they blow everything up? Yeah, it's like a big atomic bomb is what it looked like, to be real honest with you. I was that close to it. And I stood there, and back in those days I smoked, and I was sitting there, I was just going, I'm dead. It's a nuclear. We thought it was nuclear at first. And the whole thing just did its thing. You know, it went up in the air and just screamed out, and everything blew out. How many of you ever seen sound move?
It's a shock wave.
It's a shock wave, right? And how fast does it move? Anybody know?
Pretty quick.
They're pretty quick wasn't the answer I wanted. It's pretty close.
It's pretty quick, so.
It reads about a little over 7,000 feet per second.
Oh, what?
And I watched this thing come at me. Now, I do not hear it. I do not remember hearing it. I saw it.
That's it.
I saw everything happen. But I do not have anything that says any big boom, believe it or not.
You felt it.
Actually, I was just barely far enough away, and it was above me, and we're right over top of it.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, 'cause they don't happen so fast.
It happens real. I mean, I could see that thing just going, just all the way around. Huge thing, coming right around, just standing there going, oh, I'm gonna die. I'm dead. It's a nuke. It's a nuke. And then all of a sudden, and that was just after we picked up everything at the ammo dump, just barely. And everybody said, okay, hit the ground, ammo's, they're coming over the hill. They never did come over our hill, thank God for small favors. But it was one of the worst tragedies that we've ever seen in the United States Army, in that particular case. They wiped out Long Bend, which had Long Bend area where the new people come in, 90th replacement band. They completely washed that out. Killed, I don't know how many anymore, how many men and men died in that. So we all had to go back to our posts, take our trucks, the whole 9 yards, and for 5 days, we tried. And the 5th day we went because everything was a mess. Everything was a mess. And company commander and all of us, I had a lot of friends there, lost them all, not death, but I mean, they were all over the world. I have no idea where they're at. And when the time came on the 30th, we all jumped in our trucks, fired them up. Every truck had a shotgun with some kind of big weapon hanging off the window on the right side. I had a M14 rifle. You know what that is, I'm sure. You know, it's really difficult to shoot one of those things and drive a truck. You know, so I just sat there. And every truck had something on it, had a man on it, and a big gun of some type. And he was a sergeant, and I knew him. And he says, Mark, he said, I'll tell you what, he says, why don't we swap? He says, I'll give you my 45, you give me the rifle. Now, you can shoot one of those with one hand and drive, but and I said that's fine, and we had to stop for a while, and we were coming through, and then we got released, and we started out through Saigon, and you had to go by a place called Tonsanut, which is near Air Force Base back then, and I was like the 12th or 15th struck back, something like that. And the guys in front of me, all of a sudden, we're just coming into Tonsanut. All of a sudden, we've got cans and stuff for food thrown out the windows. And I said, what in the world are they doing? What are they doing out there? Why did they throw their lunch out? And when I went around the corner, I found out there were about 100 Viet Cong who had done a wave attack on Tonsanut, and they were all piled up. This is the 5th day. Every one of them dead. It was a sobering thing. It really was. We went on through Saigon and past Tonsanut and on toward Kuching, and then we had to stop. We had on either side we had rice paddies. And rice paddies are usually not your favorite thing to sit around. And we had to stop because they had an ambush set up for us. Somebody let off a round somewhere up there. So we had to sit there, and we sat there all day long. Combat going crazy. We saw the entire village was pushed out. The people who were coming, the Vietnam people, were bleeding and wounded. The buffaloes were shot up. It was quite an endeavor with all of that. So we're all sitting there. We're going, oh wow, what are we doing here? You know, like we just what in the world is going on out there? And this next piece that happened while we were sitting there took me 15 years to remember it. 15 years to remember it. And all of a sudden, here comes an F-4 screaming in right out of the sky, right over my head. And he dropped 2 rockets and sent them off into the island in the middle of the paddock and blew it all to hell. 15 years it took me to figure that out and remember that, because I built a model of that airplane and I didn't have the right perspective on it, and I sat down to watch TV one evening and I looked at that and I said, oh my God, that's the same thing that happened in Vietnam. 15 15 years. How low was he? Low enough that I could count the rivets in the wings.
That's true, that's so true.
I'm not kidding you. I could count every one of them as he went over the top of my head. And then he let him put it off. And it was the craziest thing in the world. He dropped both of those rockets and he pulled back on the stick and opened it up wide open and just went straight up in the air like that. I'd only seen that one other time, and that was in St. Louis. When they were doing testing with the new F4 that they just built it. Oh, do you remember what they called that place? They changed the name of it. Remember?
I don't know what you're talking about.
On the F4 flights, F4 airplanes.
I don't know.
Okay.
F4 Phantoms.
F4 Phantoms, yeah, in St. Louis. That's where they made them during that period before I ever got there. And it
Mark,
was- yes.
one other question.
Yes.
Was it napalm that he dropped in those paddocks?
Oh, no, it was not napalm.
It was
these were
conventional
two-
ordnance.
Two
HE.
conventional yeah, they went out there and they went boom. Just, it was an amazing thing. That took me 15 years to remember that. I put it away.
Well, what brings it out now?
Oh, after I built that airplane, the way that it was hanging in our living room, I sat down and I looked at it and I saw that thing coming at me.
So you had a flashback?
Yeah, I had a flashback then with it sitting there. Yeah, it was amazing. Let's see here. That was the worst part, I think, during TEP of 1968. Do I have anybody who was there in 68? You were? Anybody else? Just the two of us? Wow.
I'm too young for that still. I'm 61, so I was at the end of Vietnam, so.
We got there in the beginning.
Yeah, you
I was
guys
there in
did the tough
69,
work.
so I missed Ted of 68.
You missed
You
it.
guys did the tough.
I was there in
work.
69, 70, 71.
Okay, yeah. And it had smoothed down a little bit, so it wasn't quite as bad. And also during that tip, whole thing there, they came in and took all our clothes. Especially if you were slender at 120 pounds. I was slender, and I wasn't very, I was a little, just under 6.
Yeah, but you're still good looking.
Oh, no, don't get that. So, I came in all my uniforms. Guess where my uniforms were? They were at the quartermaster for cleaning. And they took everything that I owned except the pair that I was wearing.
Lucky they didn't take that.
Yeah, I'm lucky I had that. Yeah. Here I am. I got one suit of something to wear. And I said, how can I clean them? And I tried cleaning them, that didn't work. And I said, I gotta have some clothes other than just one every day. But I've gotta come in and then wash at night and then dry it off the next day. If it doesn't rain, we're okay. If not, I'm gonna be wet all day. It's crazy. So what did they give me? Stateside equipment. You know, full, long, a big, heavy thing. And I rolled it up to here. And that's what I wore the entire year that I was there, except for the first 25 days. And they said, how can you do that? You get used to it. That's the only thing you've got. After that, then it was just routine. We did have to go up to the border in Vietnam. We took all their clothes, we took all their food, we took everything with them. We were up there and we had to stay overnight that day. Two things happened that was kind of crazy. We started out, all the bridges were gone. So they had to make bridges for them. I pulled up and they had this second lieutenant. What did you call a second lieutenant?
Butter bar.
Buddy boss, right? You've been there. Been there.
Call
Yeah.
him the same thing in the Navy.
Yeah, I know, the same, no matter where you go, the same thing, all right? So, here is this lieutenant. He's standing in the middle of the creek that we have to go across, or the ditch we have to go across, and he's saying, let's go. And already several had gone, and he kept moving back, and he moved back, and he moved back too far. I'm waiting for him. I am waiting for him to get the hell out of the way, pardon my French. You know, and he's just, come on. I said, all right. He was in the middle of the bridge. I'm in E2, I don't care anymore. I said, fine. And I dropped the hammer on that 2.5-ton truck and just hit that bridge full blast, wide open throttle, and banged the next gear on it. And that poor guy, and I really feel kind of bad about it. No, I don't. Stupidity is rampant. And he realizes when I hit the bridge and I jump up there and I'm bouncing on the thing, and he goes, oh, where am I gonna go? I didn't shut it down either. I just kept going. And he dove right into that nasty water that they have. He knows what's going on. They had everything you can imagine in some kind of ditch or something like that, a little river, everything that you can think of that's nasty, including, no, I'm not gonna say that. You can, whatever you decide, whatever you think about, it's not enough. All right? But he dove in, and I just kept going. Just grabbed it all the way to 5th across that river, if you can call it that. Sometimes we have to teach people a lesson. He got one. He never did that again, I'm sure of that. Guaranteed, I am sure of that. And another time, we went all the way up, and we didn't know that they bombarded when we got up there. We took a shower, we got dressed, and about that time was 5 o'clock in the evening, and they started dropping all kinds of stuff at us, you know. And we all grabbed some stuff and jumped out and went banging down underneath the place that they had built to keep you from getting killed. But I don't even remember what you call it anymore.
Bunker.
What?
Bunker.
Bunker, yeah. So all of us, all the way down to the line, and we went, boom, I went in head first and did a roll on it, got up on the seat. Everybody came in. I look around, it's dark. And I said, anybody bring anything? All I had on was a pair of pants. My boots were in the hooch. And one guy says, and he says, I got a gun. And I said, good. He says, but I don't have any bullets. Nobody had any bullets. Some of us had guns, some of us were dressed, some of us were not. For 30 minutes we sat in there. And in the end, a long time away from all that, it seems kind of funny and silly at the same time. But under the circumstances, it wasn't any fun at all. Was it? No, it wasn't. And that was way up in the north, yes.
I'm just curious, why didn't you have any bullets?
We left them in the hooch. Yeah. We had some,
Okay,
but we just grabbed whatever we could,
Okay.
so we weren't completely naked when we went into the
I see.
bunker.
Wow.
Gotta be presentable to the enemy.
Yeah.
I guess so. Can't shoot them though.
They were shooting us first, so we could shoot back.
That's what they told us. They told us they had to address us before we could address them.
That's correct. That is correct.
And how kind of crazy is that stuff?
Well, you know, we had a special. We went on, if we thought somebody was in a hut or a house, if you want to call it that.
The
We'd go
ones
in.
above the
We would
water.
go in and we'd switch that around. You know, we'd shoot first and then
Yeah, I used to have.
and we'd drive through the house. And then in the report, it was absolutely different.
Well, people don't realize how terrible that was back then.
It was not fun. I had a friend of mine, and for some reason, he was going out every day. You weren't supposed to do that. But he'd get in around midnight, between 11 and midnight, and then the next morning he was up at 3:30 to go out with another load. And he did this day after day after day after day after day, and he complained. Others of us complained, but he continued to do that. One day we were hauling potatoes, of all things. 5,000 pounds of potatoes. And he was in front of me, and he was wall milling all over the place, and I was tooting my horn at him to keep him awake. And we got kind of toward one of the towns, and there was an old beat-up school bus coming down. They used those for transportation of the local people. And he fell asleep at the wheel. We were doing about 35, 40 miles an hour. And I'm honking the horn, and all of a sudden, his truck slides over a little bit and takes out the left front tire, fender, the works, you know, flattened the tire out, and just went all the way down. And I said, oh my God, I slammed on the brakes, and I got about 35 trucks behind me. And I'm out, and I see him go around. He goes around the corner, because by this time he was totally out of it. And as soon as his left front tire hit the fender, it split wide open, got under behind the wheel, broke the brake line. So he had no control of the vehicle whatsoever. The tire was flat, and it just drove him further and further and further into the bus. And when it stopped, he took an immediate 90-degree behind the truck into a 4-foot ditch with 10,000 pounds of potatoes on the back, doing about 35 miles an hour. Now that doesn't sound like fun, does it? Now, as soon as the bus was incapacitated, everybody in the bus got off and took off like you wouldn't believe, including the guy that drove the truck. And I jumped out of my truck. I stopped the entire stopped the entire convoy, and I went over and opened the door, and I said, "Are you all right?" And he says, "He's up on the corner. He's on the right-hand side of the corner, under the dash." His helmet flew off of his head, went out of the right window, and was bouncing down the street. And I opened the door and I said, "Are you okay?" And he says, "What happened?" He said, "What do you mean?" And I said, "You fell asleep at the wheel." He says, "Oh, 10,000 pounds. And the crazy part of the whole thing, this is how weird stuff gets. The back end of that truck, when it hit that ditch, went up in the air. And I could walk under it. It just went up like that. And when it came down, have you seen a little three-wheeler, little bus-like thing in the movies?
Mm-hmm.
You know that? Okay. And then here comes this, I'm going to call him a Vietnam guy instead of a gook. I'm sorry. And he's on the brakes because he's coming down at a pretty good clip. When he makes he goes, and he stops, and the wheel comes down and just takes off the front end of it. Didn't hurt anybody. Scared the you-know-what out of everybody. So what do I do now? I'm the only witness of an accident in the whole group. Nobody knew except me. So we rounded him up, and they took him back to the to the medics. Put him in bed, and his helmet came off and went right out the window down the road. Did I tell you that?
Yeah.
Okay. See how bad I am. Then my company commander calls me. That's my company commander. While I was over there, was a wonderful man. He was brave, one of the bravest men I've ever met. And I don't even remember his name. And he says, Newman, he says, what are we gonna do about this mess? And I said, what do you mean? He says, well, he says, from all experiences, he said, this would be something that's gonna have him in jail. Court martial. That's the next step. I said, do you agree with that? And I said, no. He says, you're the only witness. Only witness. We've got to figure out a way that we can get him off the hook. Because he knew what had happened. He knew when we looked at the records that somebody had messed up. So we sat down and we created a whole situation. Said the tire blew, took out the brakes, and sent him in the ditch. And that's the way the report went in. And do I think it was fair? Oh yeah, it was fair. Because he'd been sleeping too long. He hadn't slept for years, for ages.
There wasn't nothing fair back then.
Yeah, well, learn. Learn to put it away. How many of you still have nightmares? Don't you have? You have? I still have them.
I do too. Still have
I still have them.
it. And I'm still young.
When's the last time I had it, hon?
About 4 weeks ago now.
About 4 weeks ago. She kicked me out of bed. Because that's what I told her to do. I said, if I don't wake up, kick me out of bed.
So what do you do now to make it better?
Talk about it. That's the biggest failing we have. We don't talk about it. We hide behind it. Every one of us needs to go out and do that.
We're allowed to talk about it for a long time. You weren't
Well,
allowed to.
Yeah, that's right.
That's true. That's true.
When I came back from there, people were spitting on me and calling me nasty names. And
Oh, yeah.
Baby
all
killer
kinds.
and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
They sure did.
When I came home, we got an apartment in Independence, Missouri. And when she came down to pick me up, she got lost. She made a wrong turn. Gave me a new perspective on things, needless to say. I went over with 5 guys. I came back with 5 guys, same 5.
But the problem is, back then, we was terrible. Now everybody's a hero. You know,
Yes.
everybody's
Well,
a
it took
hero.
us a long time to fix that. Let me tell
And
you.
they're still trying to work on it, so,
Where was I at?
sorry.
Huh?
5 guys you came back.
I went over with them, I came back with them. We trained together, and we came back together, and then we split them up all over the place, is what we did. I'm waiting because she's late, because she missed a turn. The other 4 families were there. I was standing in the middle of the Kansas City airport by myself. Nobody's there, she's not there yet. And everybody who's getting off an airplane would walk up and they would see me and they would walk all the way over to the wall and then on out.
Yeah.
Never say a word, just kind of, oh man, he's murdered, until she showed up. I never thought of it that way for a long, long time. But it's there, it's still up here.
I still think about that too.
Yeah. So it's one of those things. Let's see what else I got in here that we got. Anything interesting here?
I think the only war that we were horrible is Vietnam. Every other war, everybody's a
It
hero.
was the longest war we've ever had, the longest war in the
Now they're
United
all
States.
heroes and we were all terrible.
Uh,
That's kind of weird, isn't it?
When I got back, I was sent to Fort Hood, Texas. And that helped a lot, but not much. When I was driving a truck, and I drove a truck for about 3.5 months, and they came down, the main sergeant said, I need volunteers of somebody that knows how or is willing to learn how to do first echelon maintenance on trucks. And I said, I can do that. I have been trained, and I was. I was a master mechanic then, I was a master mechanic afterwards, and I'm still a master mechanic, but I also taught for 40 years. I taught people how to fix cars and trucks and mathematics and a million other things that I just absolutely love doing. And I worked with veterans for 40 years. But I didn't tell them unless they asked. That's crazy, isn't it? No? No, we didn't want to become part of that whole thing. Yes,
You were a mechanic in Vietnam.
Yes.
On the trucks.
yes.
So I'm really listening to you here, because most of us in this room own military trucks.
Oh, I know.
vehicles.
I work on
And-
his all the time.
Yeah. I'm just curious, during combat, during the 100-mile radius that you were in there, what kinds of mechanical challenges were you guys having with these trucks, and how were you overcoming those?
Well, we had some really bad trucks, all right?
Now, I don't want a deuce and a half, so be nice.
Deuce and a half. Well, you know, the deuce and a half is a really, really good piece of equipment. It'll go on forever and ever and ever if you take care of it and service it properly. I had 45 trucks that I had to do,
Wow.
and 4 people. I was one of them. So 4 of us got to be mechanics. Guess who trained them?
So what kept them busy
Me.
mechanically?
Oh, we had to maintain them. Just like anything else. You just can't go out and run a car for 100,000 miles and expect it not to fall apart.
And they couldn't go to O'Reilly's and buy parts either.
Oh, I thought it was AutoZone.
Oh, there's places, you gotta be creative with the parts.
Yeah.
The Navy would ship them into them on landing craft and stuff
Yes,
like
we did.
that.
Yes, but, you know, that was something that we learned how to do. I got 3 other guys that were working with me. That was the beginning of my new Army career.
So what was breaking?
Everything. They didn't have anybody that knew anything. I found out the hard way that these people who were running out there fixing trucks and stuff didn't know their you-know-what from their you-know-what. And I found that out the hard way because this is hard. The master chief who was on fixing up cars, and he ran the shop, right? All right. He came to me and he says, brought a truck in, had a busted window on the left side, and he says, I want you to fix the window. And I said, okay, I can do that. I was new, and okay, we can do that. I said, how would you like me to do this? He said, I want you to just take a hammer and knock the pins out of the door. I'll bring you a door. He brought me a door. I had a 5-pound hammer, wouldn't budge the hinge, and bait on it for 10 minutes, didn't budge it. And I said, well, now I know where the problem is. Guy doesn't know what he's doing, and neither does anybody else, because he's the guy in charge. You know? So I went over, and I took the 4 screws out of the bottom of the window on the inside. I rolled the window down, what was left of it, that was nothing. And I pulled it all apart, threw away the garbage, went over to the other one, took the bottom off, put it back on, tied it up, adjusted it. I've been doing windows for years. Put it back together and drove it out. And he says, this is my sergeant, this is my boss. And I said, he said, you're done already? And I said, yeah. Why? And he says, how did you do that? I said, I changed the window. And he says, really? How'd you do that? He said, I'll figure it out. I'll come and see you and you can show me how to do that. I said, okay. He never did come back. Can you believe that? This is an E6, and he doesn't know how to change a window in a 2.5-ton truck. How's yours?
Fine.
Fine, good. And I realized at that point in time that I had a real problem on my hands. Guess what my rank was at that time?
E2.
No, I actually made E3 just before.
Whoa.
Just before I went into this new job, right? And
Skeeter wings with a rocker.
yeah. And I said, golly, I said, these guys are in trouble. No wonder we're not getting these trucks fixed. So I took the 3 guys and I said, all right, I want you to go out and find me 10 pounds or 10 gallons of self-drying cleaner. Because we had about that much mud and grease and crap all over or floors. It was a nice floor underneath the crap. And I asked another guy, I said, you go find us something to scrape it with, you go find some paint, gray and black. And they came back with everything I asked. Didn't buy anything. Traded some stuff, stole some stuff.
No, we didn't steal.
Actually, it's not stealing in the Army, I think you know that. We're procuring
That's right.
and borrowing.
The Navy's called com shop.
So we cleaned the shop, down to the bare wood, scrubbed it down, repainted it, put 2 long stripes on it so you could get underneath it, and with a what the hell do you call those?
Creepers.
Creepers. So you could get underneath it. And once we got it all done, I started teaching them how to fix stuff. It was on my own. I took one guy, and every time he got under the truck to check the grease fittings, he'd fall off of it because it got stuck. And that's why we cleaned everything up. I mean, it's spotless. It was cleaner than the big shop, if you can imagine that. So we were having a lot of fun with it. And how do you train somebody on a 2.5-ton truck with a winch? You don't know?
I have no idea.
It's real. Put him on the floor. Give him a grease gun, and say there's 42 zerts on here. Anybody know what a zert is? That's the thing you go and make a mess with. All right.
Pump until it pushes out.
Usually.
Well, then you destroy the seal.
Usually. And they're supposed to give them about 4 squirts is all you're supposed to give them. Otherwise you got a mess on your hands. And I said, there's 42, and I had a winch on it. And he goes sliding through there, boom, 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 and he comes out the other end. He says, I only counted 27. I said, good job, you got them all. It's cheating, isn't it? I already knew how much because I'd already done it. And that's how we ran it, and we ran the first echelon like that, fast and good, and the truck's failure rate started to decrease when you do that. Did you get what I just said?
27 Zerk.
Yeah. Is that how many you got in yours?
I don't know.
You should go under and count it.
I'll do that tomorrow.
Yes, tomorrow. Well, at least somebody learned something, right?
Go for it, Doc.
I'll let you
Kathy
know.
already thinks you're a little on the
Yeah. 3, 4. Yeah.
And then after a little bit of that, the other guys who were the E4s, who were fixing the trucks supposedly, realized that I actually knew more than anybody else in the whole company about how to fix things. So they would call me instead of the guy who's in charge for help. And when we couldn't get it, if we took something down to the repair point, it may take us anywhere from a week to a month to get a truck back. So I said, here's what we're gonna do. And then by that time, I was I was an E4 by that time. And I was teaching them how you take a clutch out and replace it. How do you do the transmission when you break the transmission? This is how you do it. My company, Junior, he was a first lieutenant. He became our commander, but our regular commander was still there. And he comes up to me one day and he says, Newman? And he always commented on whatever I did. He says, can you put a Chevrolet engine in my Jeep? And I said, yeah, I can. I know how to do that. And, oh, how long will it take it? And I said, I know where there's 5 brand new ones still in the case. Right down the street. But I'm not going to do this. He says, why not? I said, this has long been Vietnam. This is the largest military area in Vietnam. How long do you think how long do you think it would be before they threw both of us in jail? He says, oh, I never thought of that. Yeah, you run around with the fastest Jeep in town? Right. All they gotta do is open the hood and say, that's a Chevrolet. Well, it certainly isn't stock. There's 8 cylinders to this instead of 4. And I said, leave it with me for 2 days, and I'll make it run better. Okay. Can you do with another one? Yeah. Okay, no problem. When I got done, we'd do 100 miles an hour. Believe that?
With a little 4-banger,
Uh-huh.
you were running off of avgas.
Oh, no. Bill, against the law. Terrible. They throw you in jail for that forever. Well, you got to understand how cars work, all right? There's a trick, all right?
We got a Jeep that you'd like to try for your money.
No, I actually did it. I built 3 of them altogether.
Really?
Yeah. And 48th group in Vietnam, out of Long Binh. And he says he wants his Jeep to run faster. Can you do that? I heard that you make fast Jeeps. He heard, my boss heard that you can make Jeep go fast. And I said, well, okay. I said, I can do that. I said, come back in 2 days, it'll be ready. So I built this Colonel a Jeep, just like the last one I built for my second in command. And he was thrilled to death that he could go down the road at about 100 miles an hour instead of getting shot at. You can appreciate, anybody can appreciate that here?
Yeah. Good getaway vehicle.
Oh, yeah. You had to learn how to drive it. And the people that I learned how to drive that Jeep on at Leonard Wood, we call it Lost in the Woods. We learned some tricks that weren't in the book. So we know how to drive that. We were all together. We could drive it. We could drift that sucker around at 60, 70 miles an hour and never give another thought at it. And other people were flipping them over all over. Remember that?
Yeah, it about scared the crap out of Carlos here.
Did it?
Well, the wheel
that's
that you
the one?
repaired, yeah. Unsafe at any speed. He says, why is this even on the freeway? And I said, well, we've got a brave driver.
Well, I'm still I've got the front end fixed on it, but I haven't finished the back end yet. So we're not going to drive it very far. We'll take it off, put it in the parade, and put it back on. We already had that discussion. And I'm 1 bolt away. I've just got to figure out where the hell it is. I got 1 bolt left on the master cylinder on the fire engine. I haven't found out how to get to it yet. That's how close. Everything else is okay. It looks good. Yes, Sandy?
Are you in contact still with any of those people?
Not a single solitary one, and we came from all over the place.
Really? Not one?
Not a single one of us ever came back. And, it's a transportation thing, Nobody cares about transportation until you don't have any food or clothes, or guns, or bullets. And I think everybody understands that concept, don't you? Okay. Let's see what else. What other kind of weird stuff I got in here? Let's see. No, I did that. Took us 5 days to get to Coochie. 5 days. How's my timing? Should I leave?
No, you're in good shape on this. I got 2 stories to follow yours.
No. Are they as good or worse?
They're very interesting.
Oh, okay. Well, interesting is always fun. My most interesting thing was in Texas. I had somebody, what did they do to that thing? They did something to a M109. How many of you know what an M109 is? No hands. Oh, you do, you do, you do. All right. That was the second thing that I did, was M109s. And I was battalion maintenance. I was the number 2 guy in battalion maintenance, NCO. And I got to know that stuff. It's a great big gun. So you know what it is. They had done something to it, I forget what it was, right offhand. But rather than go on a training thing for 2 days, they were thrilled to death that the truck didn't run right. It was missing a cylinder. And it's a track vehicle. It's huge. The rounds on it are about this long and about that big around. Weighs about, the breech on it weighs about 150 pounds. And guess who was the only guy that was in, who was able to check that piece of equipment? I got to do it. Why? By this time, I was an E5. I actually I went from E2 to E3 to E4 to E5 in Vietnam in 1 year. Because the first 3 or 4 months, I went in and all I did was drive a truck, and then I went into what I did was fix trucks. And when they figured out that I could fix trucks better than they could, then they moved me into it. And when the sergeant that was in charge of it, he was an E6, he recommended that I take over his position to the commander. So I went in there and I became truck master, not truck master, but the, do you remember?
No.
Okay, anybody remember? I'll come back to it. But I became, I got all the way to E5 in 1 year. All because I failed the PT test. I got 98 over that. I failed it, so I was useless. And by the time we finished boot camp, then I was not useless anymore. I was pretty good, but I couldn't get promoted. Then when I went into Vietnam, I was still in E2, and in March I was still in E2, and I went and I said, "Where's my E3?" He says, "What do you mean? You're still in E2? That's wrong." And he starts going, and he says, "Oh, you're TDY." What do you know about TDY?
Well, it's temporary duty. Your home station must have lost your orders or...
Somebody did. We didn't know. We never could figure it out.
Yeah.
Never could figure it out. So I spent 3 months as an E2. And when he figured it out, he changed it and went bang, it went right up after that. It was a crazy thing. And then I got to go home. I had a lot of fun at the same time that I was scared to death. And anybody that wasn't scared to death and having fun sometimes at times, it's crazy. But all of us were crazy, no matter where we were, what we were doing. We were all crazy. Were you there?
Yeah.
When?
69, 70, 71.
Okay. Why so long?
I was in Navy.
Oh, okay.
Intelligence. I wore civilian clothes.
Oh, one of those guys.
Yeah.
I don't know whether I have anything here else that anybody needs or not.
Well, Mark, I've got 2 things to add to your stories.
Oh, okay.
It's kind of funny in a way you bring... One of the first stories that Mark talked about was when he was on the back of this, it sounds like a deuce and a half, and it was full of ammunition, correct? And we were going through an exercise. I commanded an ordnance company out of Flagstaff. Well, actually, it was out of Prescott. We were pulling our mission up in Flagstaff at Navajo Army Depot. And during the mission, it was evaluated by the active Army as to whether or not we would be certifiable for deployment. Did these guys know what they were doing? And this major pulled me aside. I was a young captain at the time. And he said, Captain Simon, he said, "We need to talk about something." He says, "I'm a Vietnam veteran." And he said, "You know, you've got a lot of guidelines here for safety so people don't get hurt." I said, "Oh yeah, I'm fully familiar with that." He said, "Well, let me give you a scenario and I want you to give me an answer." And he said, "You've got a convoy of 10 vehicles. And in those vehicles it's loaded with ammunition. Do you put the fuses all in one vehicle or do you spread them out amongst the 10 vehicles?" And I said, "Oh, for safety reasons, you put them in one vehicle." And he said, "Well, okay, now all of a sudden that one vehicle is blown up. Where are you going with your convoy and how much is that worth?" And I said, Well, if you put it that way, it's worth nothing without the fuses. It's irrelevant what you get blown up with. So he said, just remember that in a combat scenario, some of these safety features go another direction. Now, I can't recall, this is the second story, I can't recall what the highest fire danger was. I think it was like a 5. And he said, now what level do you, if you're operating an ammo supply point, do you fight a fire? And I said, well, I think you get out at 2. You start running like the devil on the other direction. He said, well, let me paint another scenario for you. You happen to be supplying a division, an area maybe of several hundred miles, and you're the only support for munitions. Now what level do you fight that fire at? I said, I still think a level 2. He said, listen to me carefully. You're supplying ammunition to a lot more people. What level do you fight that fire? He said, well, let me give you the answer. I'm not going to test you any further. I'm going to give you the answer to this. He said, all of our firefighters were the Vietnamese, with the exception of the supervisors, and they were all Korean. He said, we fought level 5 fires. You know, it didn't matter the fire. You were behind another stack and you were putting the water on. When the Vietnamese retreated because of the explosions, the Koreans were supervisors, were down here chewing on the rear ends of the Vietnamese that would continue to fight the fires. I said, well, that is a very interesting concept. And he said, well, a lot of lives have been saved because ammunition dumps didn't totally go up, which is really not true. There are some cases that it was just a total disaster. But what it points out is some things that you're doing in peacetime, you will change during wartime.
You will. You don't even think about it. You just do it. I
Mark,
know, when we were over there, it came out to, you know, I already said this, shoot first, fly later. That make sense?
Yeah.
So that was important to do that as well. So
do you have any other questions of Mark?
Just a comment though.
Sure.
I was there 69, 71, and I had to fly a few guys from the 507th Engineers stationed at Long Binh up to Quan Loy. Okay, 7 clicks from the Cambodian border because they were up there. We were up there building things.
and they tore it down all night.
Yeah, and so I was there, and from their buildings and their barracks, you could look out and see the entire Long Binh ammo dump. So I know that very well.
Okay, thank you. Awesome, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it was spread out.
Oof. Anything else?
Well, I want to give you a certificate of our appreciation for your efforts. I was going to put that he was 10 minutes late, but there's no need to put that on. But it's a certificate of appreciation awarded to Mark Newman, Vietnam War presentation, July 26, 2018, from the museum.
Thank you very much, sir.
You're welcome.
What? Oh,
Mom.
Mom. Sandy.
She's going to talk a little bit about Frank Luke. Our next meeting is in October, and that's past the date of his 100 years of service. She's been working diligently with the state of Arizona, and got some very interesting responses here the last couple of days. So I don't think anybody else. Luke has finally got together a plan, which we've seen a preview of. So Mom, we're going to do that. The other thing is, for those that are interested, I've got 6 or 7 copies in here. And his picture, I took the picture out of there somewhere back.
I'll go get it.
Back here.
I'll go get it.
Okay. Dates of the different things that we're doing. So if you want a copy of that, you certainly can
You have this back, I put it on my book.
Did you? Okay.
Yeah, I need one for my book too. So.
I'd like a copy.
Thank you.
Need one to put on Facebook.
Yeah, that would be helpful.
That's great. It's coming.
Oh, here it comes. We named our CFW post after him.
The other thing is we brought if you want to take a look at a replica of a Medal of Honor during World War I, during different times, the medal has been updated, but this is a replica of a World War I Medal of Honor. When you hear somebody ever use the term that they won the Medal of Honor, politely correct them that it's not ever won. That is an award. That is awarded to the recipient of that. And many times it's to a deceased individual. There are only 78, I think, living Medal of Honor recipients.
I know one of them.
Nicky Bacon died in 2010.
And what was he with the city of Surprise?
Surprise, so he was the city manager
City manager.
for 4 years.
Interesting story. I sit on the board of directors for VA Rep, which is the Veterans Association of Real Estate Professionals. There's a number of chapters around the country, and every year, first week of June, they have a big, huge policy conference in DC. And so we were there, and one of the keynote speakers was Samuel Davis. Samuel Davis is not only a Medal of Honor recipient, but he is the original Forrest Gump. The movie Forrest Gump was shot and taken from his story. So I had a chance to be with him for a while. I got some photos with him. I got his book, his challenge coin, all of that. And it was just a remarkable story. But his famous quote is, "It's never over until you quit."
Not like life's like a box of chocolates or anything.
No, but anyway, somebody had asked him that, and he says, "Oh yeah," he says, I did that, and also the bench, you know, the park bench, and he talked about that. And he talked about how Gary Sinise was actually, he says, "I consider Gary Sinise a brother." And then someone asked him about Tom Hanks, and he said, well, he said, if we were in the same room together, Tom might come over and say hi. And I was really disappointed at that because I thought that Tom Hanks was above something like that, you know. But Gary Sinise, he said, is true all the way through for everything he does.
And he's a non-combatant, he's a non-service member too.
Right.
So, other than the film, so that's interesting. Okay, Mom, it's your turn, but before you do that, I want to thank both Charlie and Kay and Calvin. They all three have gotten together, and between cake and cupcakes for all in the back, they are instrumental in bringing that. The other thing is, in a general sense, keep a lot of folks in your prayers. Leo, and Charlie's having some things he's working on. We've all had ailments from here and there and whatever, but you know, we're not on this earth forever, so just remember and keep those folks in a prayer. And it's your turn. I'm gonna have you use the microphone.
She's a retired teacher, she can yell at her now.
Okay, I will try not to speak too long. Can you hear me without the microphone?
Yeah.
Okay. Actually, I'm not going to use it, okay? I'll just speak a little bit louder. I don't want to take a whole lot of time, but I do want to bring you up to date on what has happened in just the last 2 days concerning this Frank Luke Jr. Honor that we're trying to get going for him, because as it shows on the paper, this September 29th is the 100th anniversary of his death near Verdun, Morveau, France, actually, which Bill and I were so blessed to be able to go to 2 years ago. And it's also, of course, the 100th anniversary this year, Veterans Day, of the end of World War I, Armistice Day. So this is a huge year for World War I. But anyway, I've been trying for almost a year through the Arizona governor's office to get a day of proclamation on September 29th in honor of Frank Luke. Well, not getting very far, and I did on March 30th. I went online and got a proclamation day in his honor. Unbeknownst to me, I just assumed mistakenly that it would be a statewide thing, the governor would proclaim it, all these wonderful things. No, you just get a certificate at your home. If you have done this, put this online, well, that's not going to do anybody else much good. So, I've been talking to the commission down at the Capitol, different commissions and committees. One problem is how many of you have seen his statue in front of the Arizona State Capitol? It's the life-size statue of him. It's a great statue, but the date is on it wrong of his year of birth. He was born in 1897 in Phoenix, near where the Capitol building is, and they've got 1898 on there. We're in contact with Don Luke, who is the direct nephew of Frank Luke, if you can believe it, through all the years, but that is how the family works. And so, found out from him and through the book Above and Beyond by Keith Lloyd that was at the Luke Days.
And also spoke to us here.
Yes, and spoke, I think, back in January. He had in his book that the Luke family sold tickets to raise money to have that statue built back in the early 1930s, which would have been at least 12 years after Frank Luke died. It was a true story. I asked him about that, and then he told me again a few weeks ago on the phone he had just found some of those original tickets that his family had made up to sell to get that statue made. I'll try to finish this up. Just yesterday I thought, oh, for crying out loud, I'm not getting very far with these commissions and committees at the Capitol. I'm going to contact our local legislators. We're in District 13, many of you are. One of them is, he just took over in February, it's Timothy Dunn. I spoke to his aide. She got right to work on this. She spoke to him, even though he was at his son's graduation from the Air Force in Texas. She spoke to him, and they texted also. And she's going to try to get a media event on September 29th. We're going to work on getting that statue fixed up. She says whoever commissioned that statue has to be the one to okay getting it repaired and fixed up with the correct date. So, I emailed Don Luke this morning, and I didn't receive an answer yet. Also, we've been talking, Bill and I went to meet the historian at Luke Air Force Base months ago, Rick Grissett, and he emailed and said, yes, some of the school districts are getting materials out for the kids, and I guess they're like worksheets so that the students are going to be learning about Frank Luke. I don't know if it's coloring or what it is. Some of the airmen will be going to the schools to speak about Frank Luke between September 1st and 20th. So that's neat. So there are some things going on. But we really want this to be a whole statewide thing, if at all possible, let alone with our museum and this display and the World War I uniform and everything that we have. So, we'll keep you posted. If any of you want to help with these efforts, that would be great. Debbie Lesko, talked to her man back in Washington, D.C. this morning. She's just for our district back in Washington. So finally, in just these last 2 days, this is starting to finally come together. So keep the prayers going that this happens, because we only have 2 months left. So thank you so much.
And with that, we're dismissing, and please have some cake and cupcakes. Thank you for coming, and next time also, bring a friend.
I did.